Hello, everybody. Welcome to week 4 of Cancer season, Expansive Astrology Academy. We're here. We're in week 4. We're in the tarot week. Yay. I'm really excited to bring today's lesson to you. How are you doing? I hope you're doing well. I hope everything is integrating and that you're feeling really empowered and feeling more and more like connected with yourself and aware of yourself and how you operate. And I hope you're feeling more and more empowered to take power over how you operate. That is my goal here, right? Is to help you honor your nature and understand your nature even fuller, more fully, as knowing as you can be with yourself and with your nature, so that you can craft your life and craft your future. We have to know ourselves deeply and know how and why we are so that we can really use everything that we are and everything that we have for our benefit, so that we can use everything we have to craft our future. And I think that the way Cancer really invites us to dive in and look at ourselves and how we experience comfort and create a sense of home here on this planet in these lives that we're living. The invitations of Cancer are really illustrate that goal that I have for expansive astrology, that goal of you knowing yourself so deeply and honoring your nature so deeply so that you can really craft the future that you dream of and that your soul wants to expand into. Cancer is such an expansive sign. I hope you're feeling it, and I hope it's not too uncomfortable. The growing pains can be uncomfortable. Today, we're talking about the tarot. We're the 3 cards that are correlated with Cancer season are the Chariot. The Chariot, Cancer is ruled by the Chariot, period. And then we also get special mentions, little sneak peeks of the High Priestess, because the moon rules Cancer, and the Jupiter, and the Wheel of Fortune, because Jupiter is also strong in this sign, and Jupiter rules the card, the Wheel of Fortune. So all 3 of these cards have been with us all season long, and the tarot is just such a great way of helping to illustrate these astrological energies that we're in. The tarot has a great way of illustrating the themes, the ways that we can harness and embrace these energies to help us. That's why I love bringing the tarot to this work here. I'm just gonna dive right in with the Chariot. I need a sip of water already. All right, the Chariot. I still don't know if it's mirrored. I can never remember if it's mirrored for you guys. Here's the Chariot card in the Centennial Pamela Coleman Smith rendition. I'm going to talk more about the symbolism at the end. And for now, the first thing that is important to mention is that this card is called the Chariot, not the charioteer. Right? This is about the chariot. It is about the vehicle. It's about the shell, if you will. So this is really an expansion of what we've been working on and what we learned last week about our shell and our defenses and like our outsides, our outers. We're taking that even deeper this week with the Chariot. The Chariot invites us into a deep and thorough review of our lives. And I want to back up and just name like my lineage, right? I always give credit where credit is due. Lindsay Mack is my main tarot teacher. Her teachings are where I've gotten most of my understanding of the tarot. And I've really taken her like soul-centered tarot lens and of course applied my own critical thought and my own experiences with the cards. So these are my interpretations, and I learned from Lindsay Mack. So I have to name that because her brilliant mind is brilliant and deserves to be acknowledged and recognized. So I just had to name that. The Chariot invites us into a deep and thorough review of our lives. We can assume that we're at some sort of graduation point, whether we know it or not, which is very, very much reminiscent of this Cancer energy, right? Which is a cardinal sign, and the cardinal signs, cardinal energy, they're the movers and the shakers of the zodiac. The cardinal signs help us make a 90-degree turn and shift into something new. Cancer is a sign of movement, thus a chariot, movement. So we get to decide, we get to empower ourselves and make a choice. Do we want to stay in this old chariot? Do we want to stay in this crusty old shell that I'm kind of expanding outside of? We always have a choice. We always have a choice to stay where we are and continue as we are, or to allow ourselves to outgrow this, to allow ourselves to expand beyond wherever we are. We always have a choice. So this is really about knowing when we've gone as far as we can go with what we have. And that can be a very like brain threatening idea. The brain likes attachment. The brain likes stagnation, really, most of us. Well, to varying degrees, some of us are more willing. To some degree, some of us are more willing to embrace impulsivity or adventure. I think it's fair to say that as a rule, our brain chemistry likes to know what to expect, likes to think that where we are is like secure and safe, and that we've got it here. So a lot of the time, this idea of knowing that when we've reached our limit, when being awake and aware to when we've gone as far as we can go, is not always something that the brain is very comfortable with. The brain doesn't really like to let go. So this is, and this is important to know, that a natural and sacred and beautiful part of life is sacred outgrowing. It's a natural part of life to evolve and outgrow things, right? We have to continue to evolve and grow and outgrow. We have to. That's what we're here to do. We can almost always assume that some sort of expansion is coming to us. We can pretty much always assume that, especially in a time or in a period where we're feeling really contracted or stuck or small or out of control or hopeless. Those times especially, we can know that expansion is coming. We are always growing and expanding. So with the Chariot, we really get to explore. We get to do this deep, thorough review of our lives and explore how far we've come and the possibilities of where we may still have to go. We get to really explore our trek thus far. We get to explore how far we have come and the possibilities of what is still possible for us. The possibilities of what is possible. Nice. And so not only this doesn't only include like stepping out of this chariot or this shell and upgrading to a new one and evaluating what is working for us to keep us moving, but it's also this also signifies the choice that we have to decide what we are keeping in our chariot. What parts are we reclaiming and putting back on? And have we chosen? Have we chosen wisely? Have you really taken stock and inventory of what is hanging out in your shell, what is hanging out in your chariot? And have you intentionally and carefully placed these things here? Have you evaluated them and seen like, yes, this has gotten me this far, and this will serve to continue and further my growth and my journey. So I do want this with me. I will keep it here. Have you chosen carefully what your chariot is made of and what is in your chariot? And if you have, then there's no shame allowed. If you can confidently say that these things about me I have evaluated and they are still serving me, and so I still do want them around, that is like knowledge that you can rest upon, that you can remind yourself of. Like I have chosen these things. And if somebody wants to shame you for whatever it is, or if you find yourself kind of moving into shame about whatever it is, you can remind yourself like, nope, this is part of me and it's staying around because I want it here. Especially if somebody else is inviting you into some sort of shame or weirdness about any part of you. That's the beauty of doing this work, is that you get to look at yourself in the face of somebody who might be criticizing you, and you get to say like whether or not you have empowered yourself with where you are. You get to say again, like, no, I have chosen that like carefully evaluated and chosen to be this way, to make my life this way. So you can't shame me out of it because I know from a soul-centered place that this is right for me. So this begs the question, when do you decide, when do you know that it's time for a new chariot? What might get in the way of leaving some certain things behind? Take inventory and explore with yourself, like, what is making me want to hang on to this, that, or the other thing, or attachment, or belief, or behavior, or pattern, or relationship, or job, or hobby? What is preventing me? What is getting in the way of me leaving this behind and stepping into a new chariot? What would it require for me to step into a new chariot? It takes a lot. It takes a lot for the hermit crab to decide to search for a new shell or to try out a new shell. It's a dangerous process. It's a dangerous idea. It takes bravery to leave something in the past, to let something go, to step out of an old chariot. It takes bravery. It takes a lot of root work, digging deep. A lot of times it takes healing like generational shit, generational trauma. It takes, in order to decide that this chariot is no longer serving me and it's time for something new, that requires like radical acceptance of where we are and the state of our chariot as it is. And that can be hard alone for our brains to wrap around. Radical acceptance of where we are. A lot of the time, we don't want to admit that this chariot is not the best chariot anymore. That requires a certain sense of humility. It requires humility to know, to admit, to take action based on the fact that we can't get any further with whatever this chariot is made out of. It takes a lot of humility, right? It takes vulnerability. It takes an action. It takes marrying the desire to an action. It requires a move. It's a big deal to change shells, to upgrade chariots. It's a big deal. And it really helps to remember that this sign is ruled by the chariot. And the chariot is ruled by Cancer. And the Cancer is ruled by the moon. So these sorts of processes, this kind of sacred outgrowing, it occurs on the moon's timing. This happens in phases. And we can know that even in the times where we're feeling really incomplete or afraid to move and grow, the times that we're feeling really incomplete because we're not feeling as shiny and enlightened or bright as we know we can be at other times, we get to remember that we are a reflection of the moon. That potential still lives inside of us. The days that the moon is dark, we know, and it knows, that it is still capable of being full. And that we experience even the full moon, the shiniest, brightest, strongest sense of the moon that we know, even that experience that comes around and comes back around and comes back around without fail every month, even that full moon that we can rely on and that we know will always be there, even that we experience differently every month because it moves from sign to sign every month. And it aspects different planets every month. And there are different types of eclipses, different years, right? So wherever you are in your chariot, trust that it is happening. Trust that your life is unfolding in sacred timing. Some symbolism. Just briefly, I think for this card, the most notable things, in my opinion, are that the chariot is sturdy. It's decorated. It's pretty. It matches his outfit. I guess I should say their outfit. And they certainly are comfortable there. Like, they rule their chariot. It is theirs, undoubtedly. And is this chariot the greatest? It seems to be made of stone. I don't know how far it's going. And the horses that are meant to be pulling the chariot are actually sphinxes. It's not moving very far, right? He's not really getting anywhere in this chariot anymore. And it serves, and he looks great. I'm sure he's respected. I'm sure he still gets shit done. And I don't like gendering the cards as much as possible. And I'm still working on that, clearly. Sorry. They could they can undoubtedly go so much further if they were to upgrade their chariot. Go to the local Kia dealership, see what they've got, get yourself a nice new reliable chariot. It's reasonably priced, reasonable on gas mileage. Finance that bitch if you need to. It's time to expand. Now, speaking of this process with the chariot and sacred outgrowing, speaking of that happening on the moon's time, It's time for the High Priestess to come out and play. Now, she's got much more symbolism that, again, we'll get into shortly. I'll break it down later. The High Priestess is ruled by the moon. And if you're wondering why the moon doesn't rule the moon card, I wondered the same thing. I really assumed that the moon ruled the moon card. And the moon card is more correlated with Pisces. So that'll come up later this year. And the relationship between the High Priestess and the moon is evident. It's sacred. It's there. It makes sense that the High Priestess is ruled by the moon. So the High Priestess as an energy, as a card, a High Priestess is the keeper of secrets and great mysteries. The High Priestess invites us to explore our intuition, to explore the landscape of our intuition. So this kind of reminds me of how week 2 was about the crab and week 3 was about the shell. I wasn't too far off with that. So when we're in High Priestess energy, we are given a strong invitation to simply listen, to quiet down and listen to our innards. I will not say innards anymore. Simply listening to ourselves, to our intuition, tapping in to our intuition, which is hard work. It is hard to turn off the brain and try to just connect with soul and spirit and our intuition inside. It's really hard to turn off the brain. And in doing so, the High Priestess comes before the Empress. And the Empress is all about receiving. Being quiet and listening and opening is the preparation work to receiving. Right, so it's so good that we've been doing so much work this season with retreating into the shell and observing what is in there and loving what is in there inside of our shells. That is the foundation of this kind of quiet, of this kind of listening that we're speaking about. This kind of listening that is so often very uncomfortable for our brains to hear, to accept. I think a big part of the reason our brains really struggle to tap in and just listen and get out of the driver's seat is because intuition is not a linear thing. And our brains like linear things. Our brains like to know how things work and like lay it out. And I don't know if we can ever fully explain what our intuition is all about. I tried briefly in Gemini season when I spoke in depth about our nervous system and how our nervous system is so magical and complex and does so much work for us and is able to pick up on so many things that we don't even think about or that we're not even aware of. Like we try to describe our intuition and like connect it to things like our chakras and the nervous system and God or prayer. We really try to understand, even down to do you hear my bird screaming? Holy moly. Even down to things like explaining that I understand that confirmation bias exists, right? And that my brain seeks out what it wants to seek out in order to confirm its biases and to confirm. My brain seeks proof to confirm what it already thinks, right? I believe that. I know that. And is that just my brain's way of trying to describe a way, something a little more magical and a little more beyond this like human earthly existence and idea of what I believe existence is? I don't know. We won't know, right? Um, as far as my brain is concerned, no, it's confirmation bias. We can describe it, we can explain it. And as far as my soul is concerned, it's more than that. We're connected in a deeper, more intimate way than that. And my point right now is that intuition is not a linear thing. The brain does not compute. It doesn't happen the way our brains would like it to, where we can get a yes or a no answer to a question, or we can get very specific guidance and get what we feel we need from the universe on call. It doesn't quite work that way. Spirit is not, the universe is not on call for you. You can't say, dear God, I would like a boyfriend, or I would like a job, or I would like a house. I mean, you can say those things, right? And you can't expect spirit to be on call for you in those ways. That doesn't mean that you can't call on spirit for what you need. You can wish for those things and try to manifest those things, absolutely. But this means approaching your intuition and your connectivity with something, whatever is greater, in a very humbled and open and curious, questioning way, as opposed to a very like egoic, brain chemistry, human way of, am I going to get a boyfriend? Pull a card. Is this job the right job for me? Pull a card. What does next week look like? Pull a card. The tarot and intuition doesn't always quite work like that in such a black and white linear way. Intuition is non-linear. It's spiralic. Much more effective questions for spirit and connection would be things like, is there anything that you would like me to know? Is there anything that I need to pay attention to? What am I being invited to pay attention to? What is the medicine of this moment? Right? That's more open and curious connectivity. I hope that makes sense. So what we're working with in the High Priestess is connecting with our intuition and attending to the reactions of the brain, setting the brain aside, really. Because the reactions of the brain when we talk about things like this, and it might be happening for you now as I'm speaking, are, oh, this is woo-woo shit. How do I do it? How do I make things work for me? How do I manifest? Let's see, our brain really reacts like in fear. We get afraid to trust ourselves. We get afraid to trust our intuition. We start to think that we're just crazy or paranoid or whatever. That's very like brainy ways of thinking. What other reactions do our brains have? We might think that we're not intuitive enough. I'm not magic enough. I'm not enough of something or the other to do this kind of work, to be an intuitive person. We might think, I don't know what else. What is happening for you? Like, what is coming up in your brain as I talk about intuition, as you think about your intuition, as you really think about High Priestess energy and connection to your intuition, your capacity to be the keeper of secrets and the knower of mysteries. What does your brain try to pull you into when I say things like that and when you consider things like that? And isn't that just so typical of your brain? Whatever it is. it takes a lot of practice and work to have a connection with both our brain and our logic and our intuition, our connection, our magic, our power. You are the high priestess. You are a being of mystery, of spiralic nature, of great change. So any of your feelings, any of your brain's messages of I'm not intuitive, I'm not connected enough, I can't tell what's my intuition and what's my brain, I can't hear it, blah blah blah, that's all brain. Those are all brain messages. You are intuitive. You can connect. Simply the work is to simply listen. And I say simple knowing how hard it is. And the work is to simply just listen, be open, turn the thinking mind off, and ask, how can you reclaim what is in you? How can you reclaim a sense of knowing? How can you reclaim a deep respect and trust in your intuition? I love this message. I love this medicine. I love giving my damn thinking mind a break because it does a lot of work for me all of the time, right? I'm sure yours does too. You can tap in. So a little bit on the symbolism. We have the moon and water at her feet. Though it really looks like, if that's water at her feet, it almost looks like she's coming of the water. She's created from the water, or she is the water. She has a cross on her chest, the symbol of the triple goddess on her head, and all of these things, having the moon at her feet, all of these things symbolize her access to ancient wisdoms, and the spiralic power of nature. She's supported by, she's resting in, her foundation is that of moon and water. The Torah is said to be the scroll that holds the ancient wisdom of the universe, all that is and all that will be. And the columns that the high priestess sits between represent the full and dark phases of the moon and are named for the pillars in Solomon's temple. Boaz and Yakayan. Boaz and Yakayan. Boaz translates to strength or power, and Yakayan translates to establishment or stability. Then she's surrounded by pomegranates, a symbol of abundance, fertility. There's a lot of powerful symbolism here. And our relationship with the high priestess is deeply personal, just as our relationship with the moon is deeply personal. I would feel this sense of pressure to prove or to describe the power of the moon and why it is so magical and why it is so wonderful to have a connection with and a relationship with the moon, and maybe some rituals, some self-care or magic, witchy rituals around the moon. I used to really stress myself out about how I can emphasize that to somebody who doesn't get it yet. And then Lindsay Mack, my tarot teacher, I heard her saying, I don't need to describe the moon to you. Every single person has a connection with the moon on some level. It's very personal, but each of us knows what our relationship with the moon is like. And when she said that, I was like, yeah, I guess that's true. Even before I was a very witchy person, I got this tattoo of the moon phases before I ever started really digging into astrology and working with astrology and working with the moon. My grandpa, who, as far as I know, would very much shock me, As far as I know, my grandfather had no real connections with the moon or witchiness, or I don't think I wonder what he would think of this work that I'm doing today. And he used to always say, you can always find me in the moon. Ugh, God, so sweet. We all have a relationship with the moon. We all have a relationship with our intuition. We all have connection to our intuition. We all have an inner high priestess that we can call upon and access. And one of my tips for kind of like turning off that brain chemistry, if you struggle with that, is to acknowledge it and kind of have a relationship with your brain and talk to your brain and say, like, acknowledging something like, I'm really, so like literally to yourself, or out loud or just to yourself, stating like, I'm finding myself having a lot of doubt about what's coming up for me. I'm finding myself really doubting my intuition. My brain really isn't sure whether these thoughts are intuition or anxiety. Naming what the brain is doing, and then also naming that you're open to it, whatever it is for you, right? Naming. So, for example, I have this feeling that I should start pursuing. I don't know. Fuck. I don't like giving like very solid specific examples. I want to think of something from my life. Something silly like, I have a feeling a cop is up ahead. That's your intuition. And then your brain might say, it's likely that a cop is up ahead. There's always a cop up ahead. Why wouldn't there be a cop up ahead? This is a speed trap. It's a place the cops always are. That's not your intuition. That's just logic, right? It's kind of a trite example. But you're kind of going back and forth between honoring your intuition and what's coming up for you, and your brain saying, like, that's not intuition, that's me. Your brain takes all the credit. You can say, like, I'm finding myself really doubting whether it was my brain or my intuition. And I'm open to either possibility. What I really want is to trust. Stating something like that to yourself, to both your brain and your soul, is really helpful and so important. Or stating something like, I am open to whatever wants to kind of come through me. I am open to realizing something new. I am open to being surprised. I am open to being wrong. I am open to being a vessel, and just kind of like going with the flow and receiving what I need to receive, as long as it's in my best and highest interest, as long as it's only for the highest good possible for me. You kind of want to make that caveat, right? I'm going to close the door to anything that could be negative or bad. I don't know. Stating that you are open to having your brain be surprised, stating that you are open to receiving messages, stating that you are open to having a really connected and intimate relationship with your intuition, kind of allows your brain, by default, it allows your brain to take that back seat and say, like, oh, like, your brain kind of hopefully will acknowledge, like, oh, we're playing with the universe. We're just open to surprises. We're open to being wrong. Like, your brain's like, I can do that, when you specifically instruct your brain to do what you want. I hope that fits for you. I hope that empowers you. Practice. And don't doubt. Try not to doubt your intuition when you feel like a cop is up ahead. And they were, chalk it up as your intuition. Or if you feel like a cop was up ahead and then they weren't, Well, I want to say you don't know. Maybe a cup was up ahead and you missed them, or you didn't see them, or maybe it wasn't a cup, but something similar, some sort of, I don't know, I don't know. Don't presume to know, I think is my point. Like, try to just trust those little gut intuitions, those little gut callings. Try to just go with the flow of them. And remember that intuition is not linear. So you can have a very strong feeling about something one second and then it be like different the next second. That doesn't mean it wasn't true the first second. It just means it's different the next second, right? Our intuition is not linear. And what comes up for you one moment doesn't have to be wrong just because something changed the next moment. I hope that makes sense. I think I hear this, in terms of the first example that comes to mind is in terms of like romantic relationships, when people say like, I really thought he was the one, and I thought our relationship was perfect and so strong, and I thought we trusted each other, because it's no longer that way. And I always really want to say, were you wrong? Was it a great relationship for a time? And did you guys really trust each other and support each other and help each other? Just because that wasn't forever doesn't mean it wasn't true then. And whatever you felt then was real and was true just because it's no longer true now. It's the same kind of idea. I hope that makes sense. We're going to move on to the Wheel of Fortune. I wasn't sure how much of this really fit, because like Jupiter is strong and comfortable in the sign of Cancer, but Jupiter does not rule Cancer. So this is kind of like a little tack on, a little tag along. And after I did the research and after I really sat with this card for a while, I saw how and why it needs to be a part of the message of the Chariot and High Priestess too. Yay. Because Jupiter is all about expansion. Jupiter is the planet of expansion and growth and growing. And that's what we're doing in Cancer season, is exploring how we grow in our comfort with that. So when we're in Wheel of Fortune energy, choosing to embrace Wheel of Fortune energy is an act of choosing to surrender. Surrender. Sometimes our brains don't like the idea of surrender. We like control. We like to know. This isn't the act of choosing to surrender. It's we're rewilding our sense of time and acknowledging that time too, our lives too, also are not linear. Nothing is fucking linear in this world. But we try to squeeze it into a really square linear box. We're really able to rewild what we think time is meant to be and what we think is fate for us, or what we think is fated for us. It's an invitation to come back to the center, to come back into our center, into the center of our lives in the midst of great change. In the midst of like, holy shit, this wheel is turning, and it's turning really fast or it's turning really slow. Either way, it's an invitation to come back to the center of that wheel as shit is like whirling around you. We get to really practice not attaching ourselves to the future or to the past or to time at all. We get to just be in the center. We're learning to working with our circumstances without gripping for control, but working with our circumstances without, I'm repeating myself, without gripping for control. We get to really take personal responsibility and sit in receptivity rather than willfulness. right? And I mentioned how the high priestess and listening and tapping in and just being open, that is the like prerequisite for receiving. We get to sit in the center of our wheel and sit in receptivity rather than willfulness, where willfulness is that gripping and really living and making moves based on our will. You just set willfulness aside and just be willing. There is a difference between being willful. Willful is gripping and needing and attaching and striving and like nose to the grindstone, working and needing and needing and needing. And willingness is like shaking out those fists and just opening up and being willing. I'm using the word in the definition. Brilliant. But willingness is that openness to receive whatever happens. And there is a great power in being able to receive whatever happens and stand in the center of our wheel and move from there. And use what is around us to working with our circumstances while staying willing and while staying very open. We have a choice. You have a choice. You can either try to grip the wheel and steer according to what you think you need to do, or you can release control of the wheel and watch it unfold from a very centered place. You're not that good of a driver anyway. How many times have you thought that you knew what you wanted, and then life gave you something totally different from that and 10 times better or worse? That happens too. Sometimes life hands us something that is arguably, subjectively worse. I guess sometimes it is objectively worse than what we would have hoped for or what we were willing for. And a lot of the time, especially with like this Wheel of Fortune work, we can trust that what life hands us and the way that the wheel turns is meant to keep us expanding and growing, and that there will always be another chariot to step into. We will always have access to another shell. So consider how do you work with resistance and with control and willfulness? How do those energies play out in your life? And the same with, how do you work with surrender? How do you work with trust when you don't know something, when you don't know what to expect, when you don't know whether you can trust? How do those two ends of the spectrum play out for you? That resisting and controlling and willful, needy attachment, and on the other side, when are you able to surrender and just trust and be in the unknowing and be in the center of the wheel? Remember, you are meant to be in the center of the wheel where it's less bumpy, where things are unfolding around you and you get to be present with whatever is there rather than being like caught up in it. You get to stand in the middle of the wheel and say, there's a lot happening. There's expansion coming for me. I do not know. I don't need to know. I do not need to know what is coming up, where this wheel is going. Can you say that? That you don't need to know? What would need to be true for you to trust that? We get to really outgrow this idea of needing to know. So again, this prep work from High Priestess of kind of setting our brain on pause and giving our thinking mind a break, that is like furthered here with Wheel of Fortune energy. We get to practice letting go of the idea that we need to know what is coming for us and how things will unfold. Let go of trying to control, and you get to learn to trust the timing of your life. Think of those times in the past where you thought you knew what you wanted, and then life handed you something 100 times better. It happens all the time. And they say hindsight is 20/20. Can you just remember that and be with that and be okay with that? Be okay with the fact that you won't know until later why something is happening to you most of the time. What does it look like when you are in the center of your wheel? What does that mean to be centered in the middle of your crazy wild wheel? This doesn't mean thinking that the world revolves around you, right? This means being centered in the midst of the craziness of life. And really, the Wheel of Fortune is a beautiful reminder that there is no separation between that which is sacred and divine and daily boring ass tasks. Those things are sacred and divine too. Being in the center of our wheel means focusing on what is right in front of us. It means taking our power and executing based on what is right in front of us, not being attached to the past or the future or the sides of the wheel or what is flying by. But we're really being centered and focusing on those daily tasks, whatever is right in front of you, whatever can be done right now, and honoring those things as divine and sacred. So you get to look at like what is in front of what is in front of you that you don't want to deal with? What is inside of you that you don't want to deal with? Whether that's vacuuming the floor, brushing your teeth, making yourself food, doing your taxes, what is right in front of you that you can take care of and do right now and maintain staying centered? Because all that we have is what is right in front of us. That is where we have control. That is where we have our power. We really disempower ourselves and close ourselves off when we become willful. And I use fists when I think of like willingness and willfulness. When we're willful, you're not open to receive. You're not open to catch whatever's coming at you. When you are already gripping onto an idea of what you think needs to or will happen, you're not open to receiving. How do you complicate things? By trying to do things. How do you complicate things? By trying to do things. There's a big difference between doing and being. I love that polarity, that duality there between doing and being. There's a difference between doing. Doing is very willful. Doing is very gripping. Doing is very needy. But just being where you are and being open is a whole other ballgame. So some symbolism. We have the 4 fixed signs of astrology. Taurus the bull. Aquarius is represented by the angel. Scorpio is represented by the eagle, and Leo represented by the lion. On the wheel, we have a snake moving here, which symbolizes perpetual growing and shedding in this life. This is the Anubis, I think that's how it's pronounced, the god of the dead and like the afterlife, the underworld. Keeps us moving on this life, death, rebirth cycle. The Sphinx holding a sword. Swords represent like air energy, our minds, our cognitions. The Sphinx is a keeper of truth, knowledge, and mysteries. And then within the wheel, we see a collection of letters that can spell various different things. Rhoda, which is Latin for wheel, Torah or tarot. And these letters are surrounded by Hebrew letters known as the tetragrammaton. Oh, right, which is the 4-letter Hebrew word for the unpronounceable name of God. In the middle of the wheel, we see the alchemical symbols for salt, mercury, sulfur, and water, which are the building blocks of life. And in the very, very center of the wheel is a radiant circle with 8 rays, where we can place ourselves and be surrounded by all of this mystery and mystical, abstract, mythical energy. The Wheel of Fortune reminds us that the wheel keeps turning, and that we get to choose where we sit, where we stay, what we attach to. So important in terms of the rest of the work we've been doing this season. So important to really embrace this Wheel of Fortune energy in order to work with this Chariot energy and what needs to be done in terms of taking the medicine that comes with the Chariot. Yeah, the way these 3 connect to bring such a unique combination, a unique potion of medicine. I think it's brilliant. I think it's wonderful. And I think it is so Cancer energy. So check out the PDF where I take some of this a bit further, and where you can take this a bit further with yourself, with your brain, with your intuition. And hopefully just experience this medicine that I'm bringing you in like a more personal way than just hearing it. Check out the PDF, be with that. Let me know what comes up for you. Let me know your interpretations of these cards and anything that I didn't mention here today, and how they might be showing up for you during this Cancer season. Let me know if the medicine is sweet or if it's pretty bitter for you. Let me know your experience. I'd love to hear from you. If I can leave you with one thing, it is a call to trust. To trust 2 things, kind of: the timing of your life and yourself, your deepest self, who knows so much and is so connected, and your deepest self is so interested in expanding and growing and learning and playing in this lifetime. I want to encourage you to connect with that version of you and be with that part of you, while having a healthy, loving relationship with your brain at the same time. Cancer season has been all about loving yourself from the inside out. And we have there are endless ways that we can take charge of how and where and when you love yourself. There are endless ways that you can really respect yourself and um, tend to whatever it is that you need to shift inside and out so that you can love yourself even fuller, even further, even deeper, even harder. Okay, I think I'll leave you here. Cheers, hydrate. I will see you in Zoom coaching calls, and I will see you for our cancer season wrap up next week. The transition between a water sign into an air or into a fire sign is fierce. They're not opposites. Water and fire aren't opposites necessarily, and they sure are contrasted. So I can't wait to share with you how we can bring all of this with us into Leo season, the season of strength and creativity and expression. Oh my God, sacred, divine, and I'll see you there. I can't wait. Let me know how I can support you. Let me know how you're doing. I'm sending you so much love from my inner priestess to your inner high priestess. Sending you all the love and trust. Take care of yourself, honor yourself, nurture yourself, nourish yourself. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.